Episode 4. The wave that doesn't claim what it looks like to move without a position to defend. I want to start with a distinction that sounds simple and is actually very difficult. The distinction between authority and a need for authority. Most people, if you ask them, will tell you they don't want power over others. They just want to be heard, respected, taken seriously. But watch what happens when those things are withheld. Watch what happens when someone dismisses their opinion. When their work goes unrecognized. When someone they respect disagrees with them publicly. The need for authority shows up in the reaction. And here's what's interesting, the need for authority is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of a specific kind of structural load. A structure that has to maintain its position through external validation is carrying a weight that a different kind of structure doesn't carry. And today we're going to talk about what that different structure looks like. Welcome back to MetaMind. I'm Jelani Garaui. Last episode we looked at the Pharaoh model, frozen energy, closed centrality, the claim of control, the imprisonment of light. Today we look at the counterpole. And I want to be honest with you from the start, this is the hardest station to describe, because it is most commonly misread. The counterpole is most often presented as its opposite, humble instead of arrogant, passive instead of controlling, self-effacing instead of self-promoting. That's not it. The counterpole is not the absence of the Pharaoh's qualities. It is a different structural relationship to those qualities. Let me explain. In the ancient texts, the figure who represents this counterpole is described in 4 ways. Servant of the field, messenger of the field, a word it cast, a spirit from it. Notice what every one of these descriptions has in common. Every one of them points to a source outside the self. Not in a self-deprecating way. In a structural way. The figure is not saying, I am nothing. It is saying, I am not the origin. I am the channel. And that single shift in structural position changes everything. Let me bring this down to something concrete. Think of 2 kinds of people you've encountered. The first kind, highly capable, often admired, clearly intelligent. But there's a subtle tax on interacting with them. A sense that at some level, every conversation is being monitored for threat. That their helpfulness is real but also a form of position maintenance. That they know things but are also invested in you knowing that they know things. You enjoy their company. But you also feel slightly managed. The second kind, also capable, sometimes just as admired. But the interaction feels different. You leave the conversation feeling enlarged rather than positioned. You can disagree with them and they don't retract. You can be right and they don't recalibrate toward resentment. Something in them is not on the line in the way it is for the first person. That quality, whatever it is what the geometric framework is pointing at. It's not humility in the conventional sense. The second person often has strong views and defends them with precision. It's not passivity. They act, sometimes decisively. What they don't do is use their competence to anchor an identity that needs to be defended. In the framework, this is called the open phase. The phase that does not fix. Here's the geometric picture. Every structure, in the MetaMind model, carries energy in one of 2 modes. Mode 1. Storage. The structure holds what comes in, accumulates, builds mass. The goal, even when it's unconscious, is to have enough accumulated that the structure is secure against disruption. Mode 2. Transmission. The structure receives, processes, and passes forward. The goal is not to accumulate but to maintain the capacity for movement. The Pharaoh model is an extreme version of Mode 1. The counterpole is an extreme version of Mode 2. But here's the part that people miss. Mode 2 is not weak. A channel is not weaker than a dam. It is doing something different. The dam is storing force. The channel is directing force. The counterpole figure in the text performs extraordinary acts, healings, confrontations, declarations that cost him everything socially. None of it is passive. What distinguishes the action is that every act is immediately returned to its source. The phrase that recurs in the text, by permission of something larger, by permission of the field. This is not a pious formula. It is an energetic practice. Every time you attribute the act to something larger than yourself, you prevent the act from becoming a deposit in the account of your self-image. You act. The act passes. You are not inflated by it. You are not diminished if it fails. You remain mobile. Now, why am I telling you this in a free podcast? Because the counterpole model is not a destination for most people. It is a description of what becomes available after you have moved through the seeker station, the liberator station, and integrated enough of the Pharaoh's frozen energy in yourself to stop needing to hold your position so tightly. You can't skip to the counterpole. You can't decide to be a channel if your structure is still primarily in storage mode. But you can recognize it. And recognition is the beginning of motion. The MetaMind quiz, at the link in the description, identifies where you are in this movement. Not as a fixed type. As a current position with a direction. And the program built around each station, the station map programs, which you can find at MetaMind, gives you the actual architecture of the next movement. Not affirmations. Not exercises in the conventional sense. A geometric understanding of what's actually happening in your structure and what the next movement requires. This is the 4th episode of the free series, and I want to close it with something important. We've covered in episode 1, the 5 stations, and the basic architecture of the framework. In episode 2, the perception gap, and why shadow is sometimes the only teacher that can reach a frozen structure. In episode 3, the Pharaoh model, the 4 signatures of frozen energy, and what it looks like when a structure refuses to pass. In episode 4, the counterpole, the geometry of release, and what it means to move without a position to defend. What we haven't covered, and what the paid podcast series goes into in depth, is the law of return. The law that says, whatever has been displaced in your structure will come back, not as punishment, as a geometric necessity. The hidden pole always returns. And when it does, when the part of you that you eliminated, suppressed, or refused finally surfaces, that moment is either the most disruptive thing that has ever happened to you, or it is the beginning of the only kind of integration that actually holds. The difference between those two outcomes is whether you understand the architecture. That is what the paid series is for. The paid series is 8 episodes. It goes layer by layer through the full geometry, from the crow scene through the Pharaoh model through the counterpole through the law of return through the convergence of the poles and into what the text calls the interior witness. The interior witness is the station beyond the 5. It is the point that sees both poles without aligning with either. It is not a station you arrive at. It is a capacity you develop. And it is what the whole framework has been building toward. The link is in the description. For those of you who want to go even deeper, the book, The Crow Principle, is the full geometric text, written for people who want to read slowly, return to passages, sit with the architecture over time. The book and the paid podcast series work together. Each illuminates the other. Both are available at MetaMind. I want to end with something I said in episode 1. You are not broken. You are between stations. The architecture is there. The map exists. The question is only whether you're ready to read it. I'm Jelani Garaui. This is MetaMind. Thank you for listening.